Club competed at the School Chess Association statewide primary and elementary championship. The Orono K-3 team beat 28 other teams to win the state championship.
Wow.
The students were incredibly focused and narrowly beat Rec School, denying them a third consecutive state title. Thank you to Coach Rybagoff, who teaches chess through community education. Congratulations to the following chess players: Drew Brinkmeyer, 2nd grade; Robbie Crawford, 3rd grade; Grayson Hess, 3rd grade; Holden Hoffarber, 2nd grade; Bobby Martin, 2nd grade; Teddy Martin, 2nd grade; and Asher Stratman, 3rd grade. Last week, you also may have seen the newscast with Governor Tim Walz regarding the 2026 USA Games. These games, and Governor Walz announced that Minnesota will be hosting the 2026 Special Olympics USA Games. The governor made the announcement Friday at the University of Minnesota Huntington Bank Stadium, where he was joined by U of M President, United Healthcare CEO, and President of CEO and of Special Olympics Minnesota. In addition, Orono High School students Jenna Perkins and 2020 Orono graduate Danny Strigo were named the honorary chairs of the 2026 Games and joined the governor in the press conference. So this is a tremendous honor for our state as well as our Orono students. Congratulations. The event is expected to draw 4,000 athletes and 75,000 fans from across North and South America. So we're super excited for that. Book your tickets. And would like to close with gratitude for the exceptional community outreach this last week in our district. Last week was National Teacher Appreciation Week, and it was a pretty exciting place around here. Orono parents once again pulled out all the stops to show support for our exceptional teachers. We thank all parents on behalf of our learning community. May 6th was also School Lunch Hero Day. Child Nutrition Coordinator Jackie DeRoma shared some incredible statistics so far this year. Total breakfasts served, 92,138. This was compared to 4,993 breakfasts served during the entire 2018-19 school year. Total school lunches served thus far, 246,232. This is an increase of 33,765 meals compared to 2018-19. So we thank Lauren Spoke and all child nutrition staff for an outstanding job this school year. And finally, May 3rd was our first Community Wellness Expo. Thank you to all the organizers, representatives, and volunteers who made this wonderful event possible. Special thanks to Kristen Nafstead, Tiffany Clifton, and Jenna Torney for just their outstanding work managing donations and all the volunteers. It was really a wonderful evening. Returning for the first time in 2 years, the Empty Bowls program raised $2,000 for IOCP. And that concludes my report.
Wonderful report. Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Flesher? Thank you again. Next, we'll move on to board members' questions and comments, an opportunity for board members to update each other on items of mutual interest and committee activities that have occurred since our last meeting. Tonight, we will start with Ms. Howe and move this way.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing to share this evening.
Okay. Ms. Borchers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have three things, one of which, most of which the lion's share of the Finance and Facilities meeting will be talking about tonight. The long-term facilities maintenance for 287, as we also talked about our own long-term facilities maintenance plan, including some, we also talked in addition about some future indoor air quality changes that we'll be needing to make sort of sooner than we planned, but they make sense and we're budgeting for them. And then the call for the technology levy, which we will also talk about tonight. And so that was really the bulk of our meeting. The second thing I wanted to mention is that the Orono Foundation Bash was this past weekend, and they're still getting some donations in from that. So I don't have final numbers, but it sounds like it went really well, and people had a great time, and it was really nice to be back after 2 years. One of the things at the Bash was a group of middle schoolers performing a medley from the middle school play. So that's the third thing I wanted to mention, is a little plug, is that the middle school play is this weekend at Alice in Wonderland. And that concludes my report.
Wonderful. Thank you. Ms. Vandeven.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The the AMSD and Association of Metropolitan School Districts met on Friday, and we talked about upcoming legislation that is being considered. There's less than 2 weeks left in the, or about two weeks left in the legislative session. It will end May 23rd. Today was a rally for special ed, and we ended up, as part of our Orono action, submitted letters to our legislators supporting the gap that exists between funding and what we spend for special ed, which is about $2 million. So we did that. There was also a discussion about student data privacy, and it was wonderful to hear how legislative action works. The House had come out with a very, what I consider an onerous proposal, and the Senate was pushing for something else, and they are now coming around to something that's more reasonable. So hopefully it's not over till it's over, but we'll see. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Wallander?
Nothing to report this evening, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bash?
I was at the finance committee meeting and Sarah did a great job of summarizing that.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything to add either, other than my echoing the report on the Foundation Bash. It was really, really well done.
And so I forgot to say something, which is thank you very much for all of the committed volunteers that run that. They always do a fabulous job, and it takes a lot of time, and so thank you. Sorry, I forgot.
Yeah, no, it's very well run and organized, and yeah, I know how many hours that get put into some things like that, and we are very appreciative for all of those efforts, because it goes right back to the kids of our district. So, all right, let's move on to old business, and we have a number of policies to approve tonight. We did get a preview of those policies at our last meeting, and I'm to understand that there have been no substantive changes made to the policies as presented last week or last meeting. So I would entertain a motion to approve the various 400 level policies that are listed in the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I so move.
Okay, been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on any of those policies? Any questions, comments? If not, we will once again go through our roll call vote, and we will start with Ms. Howe.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And with that, motion unanimously carries. Any other old business to come before the meeting? I guess I would be remiss to not extend a big debt of gratitude to the policy committee once again for all the work that they've done this year. It's been incredible, the amount of work that they've done in terms of going through all of those policies. So thank you, Martha. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, all the administrators that have been working on that. All right, let's move on to new business, and the first item of which is long-term facilities revenue for Intermediate School District 287. Dr.
Yes.
Fleischer?
We welcome Mr. Jim Westrom, our Executive Director of Business Services, to the board table for discussion and brief remarks regarding the long-term facilities maintenance LTFM levy with our partner Intermediate District School 287. I thank the board, Facility and Finance Committee for their work and review as well. I'll turn it over to Mr. Westrom.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Fleischer. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This is something that we do on an annual basis. You're probably aware that we're a member of the Intermediate District 287, and they provide some services for some of our students in a different setting other than here locally at the campus of the school district. So on an annual basis, we actually, as business managers and superintendents and board members of 287, approve a 10-year long-term facility maintenance plan for their facilities. And then we actually allocate out a portion based on a pro rata amount to each of the member districts. And so this evening, we're asking this board to approve Orono's share, which basically is in your packet. And I apologize, I kind of dropped everything when I came up here, but in the agenda, you'll see the amount that we're asking for approval. And then once this is approved, this will actually fund a portion of the 22-23 school year long-term facility maintenance plan over at the 287 facilities. The Finance and Facility Committee of the board, Orono board, we actually met and discussed this and looked at it in great detail. And it's a pretty robust vetting process with 10 or more member districts, so we can make a recommendation for approval with a high level of confidence. So the recommended action is before you.
Okay, and that share is $28,051.71.
That is correct.
All right, do we have a motion to approve that proposal to fund the LTFM plan for intermediate school 287?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'm
Yes.
not sure, did Jim say what percent of the total the 28,000 is?
No.
No.
Actually, I did not, and I don't know that I have that information.
It's about 3%.
Yeah.
3.
Yeah, it's in here.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bash. It is a small amount. It's based on student enrollment, each member district.
3%.
Yes. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Any other discussion, questions? If not, we'll go through a roll call vote again, starting with Ms. Howe.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
So after that, we will move on to a elementary school spotlight. And for that, I will turn it over to Dr. Flesher for introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I welcome Dr. Aaron Ruland, Executive Director of Learning and Accountability, Ms. Bailey Nett, Orono Instructional Technology Coach, and Ms. Lindsay Lawless, Orono Intermediate School Grade 3 teacher, to share a spotlight on excellence in Orono schools and a very engaging interdisciplinary unit for our young learners. Dr. Ruland.
Thank you, Dr. Flesher, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Excited to share another exceptional example, exceptional spotlight of our teacher excellence. Bailey and Lindsay's work is really an exemplar of our interdisciplinary work. They're going to talk in a moment of all the content areas that they cover, and it's just phenomenal. It's also fun and engaging for kids, and I hope you see that in their report and in the video they're going to share. So the other piece about this that's important tonight is Bailey's one of our instructional tech coaches. This is going to illustrate the work that our instructional tech coaches do with teachers. Christine Ganyu is our other technology coach, and we couldn't do this work without them. So I want to thank Bailey and Christine for that work, and thank Bailey and Lindsay for sharing their work tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us. We're really excited to share with you a cool project that we did and explain a little bit about what happened or what is happening in our third grade classrooms. So we thought we'd start with what is Dash. I'm sorry, back up. This project was called Dash's World Adventure. So we charged students with the task of programming this robot to travel around the world and giving him a reason why he would travel around the world. So the tool that we used was our Dash robots. We have 12 of these available at our elementary schools. They're purchased with curricular funds and they're available for classroom use. They're compatible with both our Chromebooks and our iPads at the elementary buildings. This particular robot uses Blockly, which is a very visual block-based code language developed by Google. It's very colorful, it's very accessible. It's a great way to introduce students to really complex coding concepts at a really accessible way, or in a really accessible way.
When we started using the robots, the students had experienced coding on a website with their Chromebooks called code.org, and that was really the extent of the coding work that we had done in the classroom. As a classroom teacher, I knew that we had the set of the Dash robots, but I really wasn't quite sure how to integrate them into my classroom until Bailey reached out when she knew that we were doing some social studies work. So we'll talk a little bit more about how that started and then what it grew into. So one of the third grade standards is that students are using maps and that they're able to understand the concept of cardinal directions and being able to read a map and to understand what information they can glean from that. Both a Minnesota map, the United States map, and a map of the world. In previous years, the work that we've done, you can see a picture of some of the, more hands-on projects where paper and pencil things that they were writing about, or making a compass rose, or making a continent map with partners. All very fun and engaging things for third graders, but there definitely was some room for improvement, and that's where this project came in.
So before we talk a little bit more in depth and detail about the actual project, we just wanted to point out some of the standards that we addressed. Again, our focus was just on teaching students how to read maps and giving them some experience with that. But along the way, we also were able to cover content standards in many different contents, including ISTE, the International Society for Technology and Education, those sort of bigger overarching standards and things that we want our students to know. And these are things that students either had a little bit of experience with and were then honing in on their skills in a really purposeful way, or they were things that they were exposed to for the first time and really kind of mastered through the process. So kind of the full gamut of that. So my role as a coach is to come in and work with teachers and work with students. And so as we were collaborating, we were able to bring in or bring together the goals of the classroom, which is the content standards, and then also like innovative practices and new ways to do things and new ways to teach. So as we were collaborating and planning and working together, Lindsay's knowledge of the content standards and what third graders need to know to be successful in fourth grade, and my knowledge of different ways to teach and the technology tools available really came together in this project. So my role in this then, when I was working with Lindsay, we were planning together, we were co-teaching, we were facilitating those lessons together, and then I also went into other classrooms to help coach those teachers through this process for the first time. So hopefully now in the future they're set up to be successful on their own.
It was really fun for me as a classroom teacher to go through that process. Bailey had the idea initially, and then I kind of worked through the nuts and bolts of what that would look like on a day-to-day level in the third grade classroom. And then co-teaching with her was just really fun because it was a learning experience for me, the way that she introduced the technology and step by step what we did. But also it was really powerful because I was able to write the curriculum based on what we did day to day together so that we can pass that plan along to others, and the whole team is now doing the project. So we realized in planning this that there was a lot to break down as far as how to get kids able to do this. We knew that they would need to know what the continents are in the world, so that was something that we studied. We studied a little bit about each of the continents so that when the students wrote a story about their Dash robot visiting each of the continents on the map, they had a little something to say about why Dash would want to go there. We also knew that students would need to be able to use coding to tell a list of commands so that the robot knew exactly what to do. So they would place the robot on the map in a certain spot and have to use measurement to measure how far it would be to go to the next continent. It would get there, and then they would have to code with another block which direction or which angle it would need to turn, and then how much further it would need to go to the next continent. And as you can imagine with anything, if they didn't start the robot in the right position, it would dart off in the wrong direction. So it was a lot of trial and error, and there were a lot of steps that Bailey and I realized that they would need to do first before even getting to using the map. We started out with them just using the program to get to know the robots one day, and then we put 3 little tape spots on the rug, and we had them just program the robot to go to A, B, and C, and then we layered in the map and getting them to measure. And in the end, their goal was to get the robot to go to each of the continents while they were reading their story about Dash visiting each place in the world in front of their peers.
So yeah, it was a lot of editing and improving and revising and working together, and yeah, they did a really fabulous job. So at the end of this, our result was we ended up with a really highly engaging project. Students learned skills in a variety of content areas, but more importantly, they really had to work together with their team. They were in teams of 3 and 4, and they really had to depend on each other and work with each other to continuously revise and improve and be flexible and, you know, hear other people's opinions and stuff. And so we kind of coached them through that as well.
It was also really eye-opening for me as an educator because I felt like I didn't have all of the answers for them when they were coding and coming across problems. So it really was an instance where I really felt myself being more of a facilitator of learning rather than having all of the answers. We really solved a lot of the work together, and I think it's good for students to have a bit of a productive struggle. And this was definitely a project that helped them with that.
And to see us learning along with them too. Like, we were very honest, like, I don't know the answer, let's see if we can figure it out together. And so I think that was really fun to experience that with them as well. So here's an example of one of our third graders' projects, and there's a little bit at the beginning where they start and then start again. So it's not perfect. It's the third grade project.
Dash starts his world journey in Antarctica. Dash starts his world journey in Antarctica. Decides he wants to go to Australia because he wanted to get stung by a box jellyfish.
You went to get what?
Next, he travels over the Indian Ocean to visit Asia because he wants to see the Great Wall of China. Then he travels to Europe to eat pizza.
Oh, good.
Then he goes to Africa to see the pyramids. Then he traveled to South America to see the Amazon rainforest. At last, he went to North America to get eaten by a shark in the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh,
At the end of his journey, he misses home and he goes back to Antarctica and is happy to get frozen in ice.
So, just a little peek behind the scenes. So, what you can see here is the code that was used to build a program like that. I'm not sure that this ended up being the exact project, but you can see the different colored blocks that they had to use to get all of those movements to occur. So they had to program to move forward, wait in time with their story, figure out what the angle was to turn it. You saw the one time they turned 270 versus the 90, which was kind of fun that they sort of stumbled across. Like, oh, that's the same. They don't have to turn right. I can turn left all the way around. So those really cool discoveries that they just kind of came across. And yeah, just a couple screenshots there. You can see of how they were building their program.
It also was really good for problem solving because if they got it to multiple continents but then had an issue on one of the last, they had to figure out where along that chain the problem happened and they had to be able to break it apart and fix it. So it definitely, they required, a lot of teamwork was really a big requirement.
Yeah, and so here's just some snapshots I took of some students, and you can see in almost all these pictures, like every picture I took, like the kids don't even realize we were taking their pictures because they were just so into what they were doing and so excited. And I think one of the kind of anecdotal things that came out of this was that kids that school isn't necessarily really easy for them. This is something that they got really excited about. There was one student in particular who reading is really not her thing. She just was, it was been very hard for her and a struggle. And she told her teacher, I want to be the reader for my group. I want to be the one that reads this. And so I think just giving kids an opportunity that they otherwise wouldn't have to feel really empowered and something that's really exciting for them was really cool to watch.
And also as a classroom teacher, I feel like being open to using this tool and open to working with you really led me to realize that this was just really one of those magical moments in the classroom where you realize how integrated it all is and the kids are so engaged and you just can't wait to do more work like that. So it really was wonderful to work with you.
Same.
So, we ask some questions at this point? So it sounds like you were sort of the guinea pig here for this project, so now it's being passed along to the other third grade teachers, is that right?
Yes, unfortunately COVID happened right around the time that it would have been initially passed along,
Oh,
so
okay.
that's why we started this a few years ago and
Okay.
now is kind of just picking up steam.
I'm on my 8th classroom of going in and
Wow.
co-teaching and facilitating this with teachers. So I have one more classroom left to do before the end of the year, and then all the teachers will have had this experience. So hopefully this is what we do in social studies for the standard from now on.
Wow. Well, it's really impressive. This is excellent work. Thank you.
So after doing, I'm sorry, go ahead, Martha.
do parents see what their kids are doing? Because this is fabulous. As a parent, you'd go like, wow.
Yes,
How do
they
you share this with parents?
The first year, I used the website Flipgrid, and the
Yeah.
students recorded it themselves on their Chromebooks, and then we shared the scan code so that parents could watch it at home. But this year Bailey had a great idea and she helped with that as well.
We just made a Google presentation where we linked all the students' videos with their a picture of their team on there as well, and we just sent the link out to families so that they could view their students and the rest of the classmates.
And what kind of feedback have you got from parents?
Very impressed. Just,
Yeah.
words of gratitude, and parents are really impressed that their students are able to do something like that. And I will say I was impressed too. It's one of those examples of where students really rise to the challenge and they really show you just how much they know and can do. And it's been really, really neat.
That's great.
So I have a comment and a question. I love that this is an opportunity for kids to present. I think that that's such a great skill, so I think that's fantastic. And my question is, after doing 8 classrooms, are there things that you have learned since then that now you've taken back to Ms. Lyles?
Oh, yes. The document has been very much a working document of our unit plan, and we've added notes and changes and pictures and images and things that we've found and tips and tricks. And one of the things after the first couple days, because I don't tell the kids a lot when we very first start, I just say like, okay, we're going to figure out how to use this robot and solve some puzzles. And then the second day I usually start with, what's something you wish I would have told you that other kids might benefit from? And so I don't necessarily always tell the next class that, but it's nice to hear sort of what they have learned the next day and how they would help their peers that way.
And even just logistics of the charging cart.
Yeah.
Originally, we had a cart that was just buckets, and the students weren't doing a great job of charging the iPad with each robot, and it was really disappointing the next day when they would go to use the robot and it wasn't charged. So you really perfected that as well.
Yeah. Different plugs and different things and using Chromebooks instead of iPads now. And yeah. So.
I'm curious how long the project lasts from beginning to end. How long did the students work on it?
Well, you guys started doing the writing and the research during your reader's workshop and writer's workshop block. So not including that, about a week and a half to 2 weeks, just depending on.
A lot to fit in.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's their favorite part of the day.
I'm
so
sure,
it's
yes.
something we all look forward to.
Yeah.
Very fun.
I love the interdisciplinary nature of it, how you worked in all different kinds of learning. So that's really impressive. So is there a,
Bob, can I ask a question?
yeah, sure.
So, how much, in watching the video and hearing you talk, how much of this was team versus individual work?
So the students, when they were researching the continents, they worked in partners and they took notes about some different aspects of each of the continents. And then they worked in a team to write a story, and they kind of picked one fact from each continent and put it into their story. So that was in groups of 3. And then when they actually started coding, they were also in groups. So if you look at the pictures, you can see oftentimes they would each have a role where maybe one person was holding the iPad, actually controlling the coding, and one was holding the big meter stick, measuring, and the other was helping decide how much of an angle they needed to move. So it was very much a team project. They also really had to rely sometimes on other teams as well. If they couldn't solve a problem, another team would come over and show them how they had solved the problem. So it was even more than just within their own team.
Thank you.
So my question was going to be on the interdisciplinary nature of it. Is there time in the classroom every day for that type of interdisciplinary learning, or do you try to work it in once in a while, or how does that
No,
work?
I think with the help of Bailey, she's really helped us to see our options in that. As an elementary teacher, we teach everything throughout the whole day.
Sure.
So, that block that we did this is our science and social studies block. So, sometimes we're doing really engaging science things, and sometimes this was a part of something that was really engaging for social studies. I wouldn't say that everything uses technology quite in this way,
Sure.
but we try to make it as integrated and engaging as we can. But definitely it helps to have great ideas from people who are just looking at that realm of their expertise.
This is fabulous. Other questions, other comments?
What else are you planning to do with the robot?
Yeah.
We have lots of ideas. In fact, after I finished with one of the classes this year, the teacher said, what else can we do? They're so excited. When can we have you back? And so we have some other ideas about some biography standards in social studies. I've seen some really neat things where, you can dash up. There's like attachments you can hook onto them and build with Legos and stuff. So they could dress them up as their person they're studying, and then you can actually record some custom sounds so it talks. So you can have a conversation with it. So if you say something, he'll say something back. So that's one idea. And then with some of the new science standards, some of the I'm blanking on exact standard, but some of the new science standards, we've looked at integrating this into the like animal adaptations, that's what it was, and how it can help us sort of visualize that and do some problem solving around that.
Wow. Cool.
So are you primarily in the elementary buildings or do you go across more grades?
Yeah.
How are we getting people all the way up? Because it seems like it would be awesome to have technology coaching K through 12.
Yeah, I am K through 12 this year, and actually as a result of the pandemic, Christine Ganyu historically was 6-12, and I was historically K-5. Throughout the pandemic, we sort of shifted to both be everywhere, as that just made sense. So yes, we are available to all staff K-12.
Great.
Awesome.
One thing, if you don't mind me adding, one thing I feel that you're really good at as an instructional coach is she'll send out an email with just some different tips that you put on your blog of things that you might like to look at and might like to integrate in your classroom. And I always feel like it's so helpful for me because I don't necessarily know where to look. And so if you have that sent to you as like a menu of options, you can think about what you're teaching right now and how you could use those tools. So that is one way that I feel you reach out to a lot of people as well.
Let me put one more plug in for them.
Yeah.
Bailey and Christine have been integral to the work on our website, the resources for parents and students around things like internet safety, a website with all kinds of resources for families about how to work through these things with their kids. So the address of it, Bailey, or how do we easily get to it?
I know we linked it recently
Yeah.
on the wellness document we sent out, so we can get that accessible. Where its exact location, I don't know off the top of my head. I apologize.
So they've done a great job of creating those resources for parents, and they'll be available to them now and moving forward.
Well, what a great resource for our students. That's great. This has been so energizing. Thank you so much for coming to the meeting and showing us this great work.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice job.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we move on from that to item 8C on our agenda, which is a resolution to renew our expiring capital project levy authorization for technology and call for an election this fall on that. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Flesher, to introduce that topic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I welcome Dr. Ruland and Mr. Westrom back to the board table for presentation regarding the technology levy and the next agenda item of calling for an election. I would like to make a few remarks of introduction of our team. Mr. Jim Westrom, as Executive Director of Business, has worked for over 30 years in school finance and is considered a national expert. And Dr. Aaron Ruland, Executive Director of Learning and Accountability, is deeply knowledgeable regarding high-performing schools and what students need in college and career readiness. And from the crowd, if I may, I would like to introduce Mr. Sean Beaverson. Please wave, thank you. Orono's newest and new technology coordinator, hired recently from Medina Public Schools. He has served as both a teacher and an administrator, and we're very fortunate in hiring Mr. Beaverson. He has a broad understanding of technology tools to support classroom learning. We're excited for him as he's been digging in the last few weeks. And for the presentation, as I started in the superintendent position in the last summer, one critical goal was to examine technology and what is needed in Orono schools and what is the direction for the technology levy. We have spent this year studying and looking at our next steps, and we know our tech levy is critically intertwined with daily learning for every child in Orono schools. But we know that we have needs that have exceeded our current technology allocation, and our staff, as you see tonight, have done an incredible job of managing resources and providing highly engaged student learning. Tonight we're going to describe the result of our work this last year and discuss our community survey, our history of financial stewardship, and present our tech levy renewal recommendations and rationale. As we begin, I'd first like to begin with a thank you to our community for their support of our existing technology levies. 2 levies, 20 years, really important to this school district. Orono Schools is proud of the tremendous community support that we have worked hard to earn over the last 2 decades. And that support matters. It matters every day in the lives of our children and has made a difference in our capacity to create a nationally top-ranked school. As a reminder, this fall we worked with the Morris Leatherman Company to conduct a residential survey with both Orono parents and the greater community. And there was, again, continued tremendous community support for Orono schools. For example, 94% of our residents believe they receive a good value from the investment in Orono schools. In addition, 94% of our residents rate the quality of Orono schools as excellent or good. And 96% of our residents believes that Orono schools increases property values in the community. And that's one of the things I hear frequently about when parents come in, either seeking housing or that telling me that they have moved here for the schools. And in the last few weeks, as we talked about earlier, we are very proud that Orono Schools, the U.S. News and World Report 2020 Best High School ranks Orono High School number 4 in the state and number 1 in traditional high schools. That is incredibly important for our community, but it's also important for our students in terms of access to the world of work as well as college admissions. For not everybody may know that when a student applies to college, not only does their transcript go to the college, so does our Orono High School profile. And students' admissions to colleges are studied in context of their high school. So this matters that very strong schools prepare children for the future. A little bit of strong history of financial management in the district.
Thank you, Dr. Fletcher and members of the board. It's my pleasure this evening to talk and give board members in the community is critical to the district's long-term funding plans. So once again, you probably are aware, it wouldn't be a surprise as a executive director of business services that I would be able to share some information on our strong financial management. You probably recall that last fall, Dr. Fletcher and myself were able to meet with people, representatives from Moody's Investor Services, and they actually affirmed our AA2 rating, which is one of the top ratings that a school district can get, and it's in the top 2% of Minnesota school districts. So there's only a handful of other districts that rate higher than the Orono School District, and part of that has to do with our strong, prudent fiscal management and a strong tax base as well. Another item that gives a high level of assurance to our community and to those who invest in the community is that we receive continually certificates of excellence in our financial reporting. Very transparent in sharing information and very comprehensive. So if you were to look on our website, we have a comprehensive annual financial report that has historical data for the last 10 years and also really demonstrates the prudent fiscal management. Also, we, on an annual basis, are required to get an independent audit from a CPA firm. And for at least the last 30 years, that's as far back as I was able to look, I know that we've had a unqualified opinion, which is a clean opinion, with very few remarks on any items that can be improved. And that's partly because the school district does engage a committee of the board made up of finance and facility experts. And that's the other thing I'd like to mention. Currently, the finance and facility committee of the board discussed the finances of the school district as well as the need for this technology or capital projects levy renewal. And the recommendation that we're about to make this evening has been vetted, and we have a high level of confidence that the board will be able to approve that with a high level of confidence as well. I would like to go back, and this is a long-standing history that prior school boards and school board finance committees have been made up of MBAs, CPAs, and JDs, and including this one. So as we talked a little bit about the prudent fiscal management of the Orono School District, which is a tradition, it's probably important just to set a little bit of the context on how schools are funded. So schools are primarily funded by statutory formulas that the legislature sets in motion for school districts, and the primary sources of the revenue that come to us come on a per pupil basis according to the legislator's allocation to school districts. And so we receive a base allocation, we call it the general ed formula, and then we get some categorical revenues that will assist us with other items such as learning readiness or English language learners, etc. And we also have some special education reimbursements as well. The federal dollars that we receive are less than 2% of our district's budget, and those are basically reimbursements from the federal government. Perhaps you recall that the headlines have been showing a lot of money being directed to schools. Most of those dollars that have been directed to the schools have been in response to the pandemic, primarily to keep students in school to, on a short-term basis, attempt to deal with the learning loss that may have occurred by offering enhanced summer school programming and other temporary personal protection equipment, etc. So those dollars are not sustainable and really aren't being used by the school district to fund technology. The other item is a portion of our general fund revenue is generated by local property taxes. And you recall that I talked a little bit about formulas that the state legislature puts in place. And we just approved a LTFM, long-term facility maintenance budget for 287. So those are all formulas. Boards really don't have a lot of discretion with those areas, and they're set in law. And typically the board will be asked to approve that levy, and then that will fund a portion of the next year. However, there are 3 instances when a school board does have some additional discretion. However, it does require the school board to seek voter approval or ratification. So one of those is the operating levy, and we had an operating levy that funds classrooms and teachers and lowers class size. The last one was in 2017, and that was overwhelmingly approved. And once again, we're not asking for bond funding right now, but we also have a capital projects levy, and this levy can be used for the sole purpose of financing technology. And we'll get into more detail on the specifics of the technology levy, but it does require voter district would need to go out to its community and seek additional approval. And in some cases, school districts may seek additional authority. In other words, they may have determined that they would like to increase the amount that's being asked to be renewed. In this case, and you'll hear us mention this a few times, we are simply seeking to renew the existing technology levy authority that was approved 10 years ago. So Minnesota, once again, doesn't really dedicate any resources towards technology. Primarily, their resources are dedicated for classroom teachers and basically a adequate level of education. And so often school districts will go to their voters and ask for additional support. And as Dr. Fletcher had indicated with the thank you at the beginning of the presentation, the Orono School District community has had a long history of providing that additional support. In this slide, you'll notice that some of our neighboring districts directly adjacent also have gone to their voters and asked for that additional approval. So I won't go into a lot of detail here, but you can see it's quite common. And the Orono School District, actually in comparison, is asking for an amount that was the similar amount that was approved for in 2011 and originally in 2002. So we're not asking for an increase. Basically, we're asking for the same amount and tax capacity that was asked for back in those early days when this funding originally became eligible for school districts to utilize. And of course, the board engaged the community at that point as well. So the support of the community just means so much for providing a adequate, sustainable revenue source. And so in 2002, as I mentioned before, it was initially proposed to the community, and the community accepted it and approved it. And then once again, it was reapproved in 2011 with a high level of acceptance and support. And so we're seeking, or we're making a recommendation that in 2022, we go back to the voters and ask them to reapprove the existing amount. So I'll just reemphasize that this tech levy renewal is for the same amount. So there'll be no tax increase for residents from the prior year. It basically means that we will continue this longstanding tradition for another 10 years. So we're simply seeking to extend what we've already had approved and in place for the last 20 years. And a yes vote would once again continue this for the next 10 years. So at this point, I'd like to ask Aaron or Dr. Rulin to talk a little bit about how this technology is used in our schools.
Thank you, Mr. Westrom. It's been my good fortune to be the teaching and learning director and to see the evolution of this over the past 16 years, going back 20. Really technology is integral to teaching and learning. We could not do teaching and learning in the way we do it now without our technology support. It's just crucial to provide the foundation for students and teachers to engage in the excellence in learning that we are used to. And it's not only what's happening in the classrooms, but it's preparing our kids to have the knowledge, skills, and dispositions to succeed in any post-secondary environment. We've talked to and heard that from our graduates routinely. So I'm going to talk tonight about three primary areas that our team has talked about that this technology levy is crucial in supporting. It's imperative that we provide a predictable and dedicated funding stream for these areas, and the technology levy has served in that capacity for 20 years now. So the first area is the most important area, and that's the classroom learning and support that the technology levy provides. It's essential to supporting our classroom best practices. So it's not technology for technology's sake. I think you heard in the presentation earlier. It's about high levels of learning and about engagement and about content standards. And you saw how technology and coding and some of those more specific applications positively impact that. So in the area of classroom learning and support, think about things like educational software, classroom technology. It's the backbone that provides authentic and engaging lessons for students. We are very thoughtful and strategic about how we implement technology. We want tools that are natural and fit with the activity and also prepare our kids for post-secondary experiences in those content areas. The technology levy provides dedicated funding for hardware and software. We align all of that with best practices. We have the highest standards in teaching and learning, and these resources are just integral to that. It also includes teacher training and support, so you heard the role of Bailey. Additionally, we do additional teacher training. We train all staff in the functions of their work. A range of activities from how to communicate with students and families. So you heard one example of that. We have platforms that also aid in that are funded through this levy. Thinking about feedback to students and how effective technology can be in providing feedback to students and to families. And then also curricular resources. We're building structures and a backbone where our curricular resources, our content resources are really built on a technology platform. The next area in the predicted and dedicated funding stream is reliable access. And the technology levy provides reliability and effectiveness to assure that classroom, school, and district technologies are working in concert to meet that end. So in the area of reliable access, it's our teaching and learning practices kind of rest on these district operations, on the infrastructure, things like our network, the wireless intranet, programs like Schoology and Seesaw, computers and other hardware that teachers and students use, as well as the hardware in the classrooms. These systems have to be reliable. If they're not, we can't do our daily operations and we can't do teaching and learning in the way that we've planned it. The past 2 years has really stretched these systems. I think everybody's done an amazing job of navigating this, but our technology is tired, and we have replacement cycles, and we have aging infrastructure that needs to be replaced and upgraded in the cycles that we've had for 20 years that have been funded through this technology levy. The final area is an area that's an area of new need and growth, and that's security and technical support. So technology provides funding for our campus security as well as our online security. We certainly have been working on the physical campus security for a long, long time, and we've had renewed work in the area of online security, and that's an area that many school districts are grappling with right now. So new needs in that area, certainly. So the renewal provides essential funding for cybersecurity, campus security, and our technology support staff. When you think about the infrastructure and the resources I talked about a moment ago, safety and security, our physical campus security, and our internet security rests on those same resources, whether it's cameras or our visitor management systems or the access points to the buildings. That's all technology oriented. And the final piece in this portion of the areas that we spend resources from the tech levy on is our tech staff. So they're incredible. They're our IT department, and they provide support to our entire campus and to parents and students off campus and whenever they need it. We're fortunate to have this incredible team, and we couldn't achieve excellence without them. And then finally, I would just close my piece by saying we know that the most important variable in student learning is excellence in teaching. We know it's about teachers doing great things with students, implementing best practice. We're strategic and thoughtful about that, and we know that part of that strategic and thoughtful approach is the implementation of technology in the classroom. This technology level is imperative to continue supporting teachers and students in those endeavors and to pursue excellence in teaching in all that we do. So with that, I'll turn it back to Mr. Westrom.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Berlin. And so now I'd like to talk, just to give board members a little flavor of the procedures that need to be followed and some of the regulatory items that need to occur as well. So once again, board members, I'm sure you're more than aware that you began planning the budgeting process for next school year last December. So we always need to be far out as we consider moving ahead. And so we're funded for technology for the next year. So next September through June, we have already set that technology budget in place, and the board approved it just a couple of months ago. But now we're looking to continue that for the 22-23 school year. Nope, 23-24 school year. Sorry, sometimes I'm in 3 years at one time. So, and that requires us to seek the voter approval this fall in November. So this is the ballot language that's before you, and unfortunately I can't read it because it's a little far away, but basically what it does is it talks a little bit about the authority that needs to be approved by the voters. And so the voters will be asked to approve a tax rate that is levied against the entire tax base of the community. And then the amount that will be generated is just a little bit over 1.2 million in the first year, and it's 100% dedicated for technology. Just a reminder that our facility and finance committee, as well as the whole board, did talk about the fact that we do use some general fund resources and other resources because our total technology costs that are incurred are closer to about 1.8 million. But once again, we're not seeking to receive voter approval for 1.8 million. We're continuing to look at the current amount that was approved in 2012 and originally, or 2011 and 2002. So the revenue that's going to be raised by this, I appreciate what Dr. Rulin shared kind of in layman's terms, and then we actually have to legally provide a list of what we're going to spend it on. So I'll just read this quick. It will be to continue funding the acquisition, replacement, maintenance, and support of instructional technology and software, devices, equipment, network security, operational infrastructure, and technology support personnel. So you can imagine we've got almost 3,000 students and we've got several hundred staff. So just imagine how you use technology in your own home or when you're out in the community. So it is quite a big endeavor, and we will be able to continue doing what we've been doing thus far for the last 20 years. I would like to point out, you'll notice some language highlighted in yellow. When voters are asked to cast their ballot and look at the ballot, they'll actually see this statement: by voting yes on this ballot question, you are voting to simply renew an existing capital projects referendum that is scheduled to expire. And so once again, we're not seeking to increase the amount of revenue that we're generating, or we're not seeking to ask voters to give consideration to increasing the amount of support that they give the school district. We're just asking them to support continuing the tradition that's been in place for 20 years. There are some consequences. As a finance director, I'm constantly projecting several years out into the future, and as you can imagine, at $1.2 million on our operating budget of about 30 million actually does work out to be a fairly large number. And many of the expenses that we incur in providing student with the access to technology and other tools is that we're going to continue to need to finance these. And so basically, as I mentioned before, the state provides a general adequate revenue source, but voters often are asked and often do approve enhancing that or providing additional resources specifically for the technology purpose. So the district would have to begin a process of budget cuts, and we would probably begin that process almost immediately in this fall, in anticipation that we may need to find another source if voters don't approve the current expiring referendum. And budget cuts typically in a school district, we really can't shut off the lights or stop heating our buildings or stop plowing our driveways. So basically, that means that we'll need to give careful consideration to all of our programs, all of the technology that's used in the district, as well as classroom needs. So it's important to know that there would be a natural consequence if we were unable to continue to use this technology levy. However, once again, as Dr. Fletcher had indicated and the board had heard last fall, 89% of our community believes that technology is absolutely essential or very important. So once again, that's one of the reasons why we as an administration are recommending to Dr. Fletcher and to the board approval of this with a high level of confidence that the community is going to be very supportive of this endeavor. So once again, talking more about procedures, I would encourage the community, and we'll begin to communicate with the community to become aware that the election day is on November 8th, 2022. That is a general election, so it will be at your normal precinct, which is typically in the cities. Early voting begins on September 23rd of 2022. And so it's very important that our community be aware that we are seeking a high level of turnout to determine if the technology levy will be renewed. So in summary, we are recommending a tech levy renewal, and it's a renewal only. There will not be a tax increase from the prior year for our taxpayers, so we're not asking them to increase the amount of support that they provide to the Orono School District to maintain the level of excellence that we've been doing for almost 2 decades. Then funds will be directed only to classroom learning and teacher training and providing reliable access for our students and for our staff, and then also strengthening the cybersecurity and campus security that has become so important to give careful consideration to. And the election is in November of 2022. So with that, I will ask Dr. Fletcher if she has any other remarks, and then we'll be able to.
Well, thank you
field
for
any
that
questions.
excellent presentation. You really laid it out well, and it just can't be overemphasized the the importance of getting this passed. I mean, I think you maybe even underemphasized the painful cuts that we'd have to do to balance the budget if we do not pass this. So it's critical. And thank you for all the work that's gone into this, and lots of work yet to go as we as we get these messages out to the voters. Other questions, comments from the group?
I think it bears mentioning that we have tried to increase this in the past and haven't been very successful. And I appreciate the creativity which you're able to know that we are overspending that budget, but we are going to ask for less because we are trying to be responsive to the community. So thank you for your creativity in making that work within the budget we have, and hopefully we'll get the support for that.
Mr. Chair, I think it's also important, as Mr. Westrom and Dr. Rulon pointed out, this levy is expiring. This means that if in fact you don't vote yes this November, these cuts are real. These are going to happen. Our school is ranked #1 of all public schools in the state, and this means this is a real problem. So I'm so serious about this. I just feel this would just cut our school, and this is just people need to carefully consider their vote on this. So thank you.
I would just say, oh, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
Two things. I really would like to echo Laura's comment.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Howard.
Kind of echoing what Mike said, I mean, I agree. I'm very grateful that we've listened to the community and we're responding in that way, but I think we also have to listen to our students and our teachers, and I have 2 students in this district, and I can tell you that they would tell you we need this. If you go into the community and talk to these teachers and these students, they will tell you we need this. And so I encourage our community to reach out and talk to families in the district and find out what their experiences are on a daily basis. Having reliable Wi-Fi is important to these students. If it goes out in the middle of a test or a standardized test, these are stressful events for our students, and we need to support them. I would just like to tag on that, because what I heard you say in your presentation reminded me of a couple things. Number one, how much our parents love to understand what's going on in the classroom. And one of the ways Orono District does such a great job of doing that is through technology. And so to lose that would be that'd be a huge loss for our families to not know. And then the second thing is, with the main takeaway that we had from the Student Senate, so that's in the high school, these high school students, the main takeaway, the biggest pain point was consistent Wi-Fi, consistent internet, because they're in the middle of a test. And it might be in the middle of a standardized test statewide, and that just completely messes everybody up, the schedule and everything. And so Allie's exactly right. If you have questions, talk to parents in the district, K through 12, and probably on either side of that too. Just, I think if you are living it, you see how embedded technology is in every single way your child is learning, in really fantastic ways that are preparing them for the future that will be embracing them when they leave the school. So I echo Martha's sentiment. I really hope that the community supports us.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? I think you understand our full-throated support for this, and again, thank you for a very very good presentation. And again, it's been mentioned a couple times here, but those messages need to get out to the to our public, because we we cannot fail at this. So, thank you so much. With that, I would, are there any more comments? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve a resolution to renew our capital projects levy authorization.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I'd say aye, but my technology is such that my microphone is down now. Aye.
Aye.
Enthusiastically, aye.
Any other new business to come before the meeting? If not, I would point you to the informational items in our packets, which includes May enrollment figures, and point out that our next meeting, regular meeting, will be held Monday, June 13th, back here in the district office.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
I guess we have to do roll call for this too, so starting with Ms. Howell.
Aye.
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 And we are adjourned at 8:10.